Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, as I'm going to be talking to you about the history of Hello Neighbour. This series will be in 5 parts. The first part will be about the beginning, the prototypes and the alphas and betas. The very first piece of Hello Neighbour media is the very early prototype dev game animation, which was released back in 2014.
Now he's gonna move like right along.
As you'll see, that everything is completely untextured. There's only very few colours. As you see, the neighbour is completely red with no proper animation. There's some features that are in this animation that are not in the final product, which makes it sad really, because some of these features, like being able to push objects to block the doors, and some of the stuff the neighbour does as well, is not actually in the final game. He does jump through windows, but as you saw there, it's a bit of a different animation there. And there's no proper running animation. He's sort of waddling for the most part. As the neighbour blocks the front door, the player runs around back to the garage, and the neighbour actually presses the button to close the garage. Moving on, the next piece of Hello Neighbour media wasn't until 2016 where we finally got the first look at the game properly with the announcement trailer. This is a very well-known trailer. And if you didn't catch that right there, the neighbour actually swears in this trailer, which shows the game was targeted at a different demographic at the time. As you saw, there's a few different features to this prototype, like distracting the neighbour a lot by turning on the TVs, but I'm well aware this trailer is scripted. The fact that the neighbour doesn't really do much of the stuff in this trailer as he does in the final release, or indeed Hello Neighbour 2. But as you see, you get to the basement, the neighbour pulls off the boards, but the neighbour actually catches you and then proceeds to bury you alive. Yeah, this trailer ends with a really weird ending. Just the logo and someone shouting hello. I have no idea what that means. Pretty sure nobody did. The next prototype, I've kind of probably got these the wrong order. I don't know which one came first out of those two, but this is a 2015 prototype art, which has the same kind of house layout, but as you see there, the neighbour isn't looking so nice yet. I'm guessing this is before the announcement trailer. I've got these in the wrong order. As you see there, he looks like he's got the same face and outfit, but he's wearing it looks like long jeans or something. When you get into the basement in this version, he just comes up with some Russian texts, which I don't think nobody has translated yet to this day, so I can't tell you what it means. And the next one after that was a 20-second trailer. For some reason, I don't know what this was for, probably just to promote the game again. On September 29th, 2016, the pre-alpha version of Hello Neighbour was released. This was the first public build of the game released to, general public. I remember I didn't play this version when it came out. I watched videos of this when it came out, and I liked the concept at the time, but I never really understood it till a bit later. I just liked the goofiness around it at the time. See, the way to complete this version is you had to find this black light in some room in the house. to find the basement code. And by the way, there's more details to this version, but I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible as I can. There is a nightmare sequence, but I guarantee everyone's heard about that. The Neighbour's AI consisted of 3 modes: idle, where he does his normal household tasks, like exercising, watching TV, etc. Hunt mode, where he's actually looking for you if you make noise in the house, break things, etc. He searches the house for you in different ways, looks at the things that are going around the house, what's moved, what's open. And offline mode is basically when you're not in the house, but the neighbour is setting up traps, like blocking doors, boarding up windows, blocking up doors, and basically setting up bear traps and cameras. Attack mode is when he's basically chasing you. You have to run like anything, basically. Outwit the neighbour, like try and trick him, but it's very hard back in the early days, as he's quite smart in the pre-alpha and alpha 1 days. He was very smart back then. But as we'll find out later, that all kinds of wears down. On October 26, 2016, Alpha 1 was released. This is considered the best Hello Neighbour build in the whole history of the franchise, for many reasons I'll delve into in a minute. The game actually opens up with a bit of a story with the intro cutscene, where it shows the neighbour moving, well, you as the player moving in, and the neighbour spotting you and watching you through binoculars. This alpha has the neighbour at probably his smartest he's ever been, to the point where if he knows there's different routes to catch you, he'll actually stop and try and get you another way, and goes different ways. And this was actually the first Hello Neighbour game to have, I don't know, first bit of lore, with the weird cutscene that plays after getting caught a few times, and also the weird bell puzzle with the mannequin teacher, which I can never do because my version kept crashing after 20 minutes, so I had to skip a hell of a lot of the game to actually complete it within the time limit. That brings me on to something. If you haven't seen my video on the Hello Neighbour Alpha 1, how I beat it in 3 minutes, you can go ahead and check that out. That was a terrible segue. I'll leave that in the description for you to check out, as well as my sources in this game. By the way, my only source in this video is actually Tiny Build themselves. I've gone through the videos on their channel. I'll link you to them. Some of the gameplay videos I've used from Video Game News, so I'll leave a link to their channels. And as you get in the basement here, there's actually a little bit of an ending, but it's kind of a cliffhanger in a way, because the neighbour actually shuts the door and then does the same thing in the announcement trailer, buries you alive. Oh dear. On November 22nd, Alpha 2 was released. Well, not technically, as there's a in-between sort of alpha called Alpha 1.5, and the footage you're seeing is from that version. As you'll hear, there is different music for when you start the game. There is also different sounds in the Neighbour cinematic at the beginning as well. Notice at the end player wakes up in his house instead of outside. And notice how the basement door is completely different and lacking the new art style door, as it's still in kind of between Alpha 1 going to Alpha 2 art style. As you'll see, the neighbour doesn't really make much noise, he doesn't really speak as such. As you see here, the part where the crow is, the neighbour was originally meant to be up here and there was no wall blocking him off, which means he can get up there at any time. The basement, on the other hand, is a different story. Once you get in there, you hear some strange noises. After a while, you get to a certain part, the neighbour suddenly appears and begins a chase sequence, which lasts for quite a long time, because the player sort of stops and waits for the neighbour to get closer for some reason. I guess it's also, I don't know. This can be accessed in Alpha 2 actually if you use the console commands in Ghost mode. You can see how this is meant to play out if you use Ghost mode, which I will make a video on this eventually in the future using Ghost mode. Once you get to this area where the bed is, player hides under. The neighbour comes to catch him, but then a scream comes from the door. Neighbour goes in, player pops out and goes to open the door. Trailer ends with a weird child scream, and that's it basically. I wasn't going to include these, but here are some Alpha 2 unused content, such as these unused door animations, as well as the neighbour closing both doors at the same time. Here's what the original basement is in the proper Alpha 2. Notice the lack of noise as it's replaced with this circus sort of weird music. On December 22nd, before Christmas 2016, Alpha 3 was released. Now I'm going to hand you over to the game's creator Alex I'm going to struggle with his name, Nikan Porchek, as he explains the early version of the Alpha 3 house in detail. Now I've only shortened it to a 1 minute clip so you won't get bored.
I want to talk about the Alpha 3, which is landing on December 22nd, which is 2 weeks from now. It features the first draft of the final house and its surrounding areas. We're going into somewhat spoiler territory here, so if you don't want to know anything about Hello Neighbors Alpha 3, please shut off the video right now, because what I want to show you is the footage of what it might look like. So the final house is large. It's a pretty damn interesting structure. The idea is to make it look like a normal house at its base. So like, for example, if there is fog on top of it, then you think it's a normal house. But then there is a ton of interesting structures on top with plenty of things for the player to do. We actually found that people really love climbing and stacking objects and getting into places where they shouldn't. So that's going to be a major focus in this first draft of the final house, to make sure that there is enough variety and interesting things to do in a house this size. Now, that's what you should expect in the Alpha 3.
There is very little Alpha 3 unused content. If you use Ghost mode or console commands in Hello Neighbour Alpha 2, you will notice the Neighbour 3 house. Notice I said Neighbour 3, because that is a code you have to punch in order to get this map. It's an early version of the Alpha 3 house, a very early version. Notice the lack of house. That's the only way I can put it. It's just a box of nothing, just a few doors where there shouldn't be doors, I guess. Basement is basically not a basement, it's a broken door. There's a lot of weird nothingness around. It's just doors and doors and doors and wardrobes. That's it basically, and the neighbours there. That's it. You also have some of the early prototypes for the Fear minigames, such as the Fear School and the Double Jump minigame in the cupboard. And also, I can't make out the last one. It's called Basement. I don't know what it means. But look at the house in the opening for Alpha 3 and you'll see it looks near enough to what Alex pointed out in the Alpha 3 update video, with a few things from the early textures model that are not on the house, such as the hanging room that's on one of the sides. That doesn't come back in the house until Alpha 4, I believe. And also in Alpha 3 you had this really hard jump to get a blue key. Everyone knows how hard it is and how impossible it was. The basement though, really weird. You get sent to this room. It's basically a living room with a neighbour crying in the corner. Now of course, like Alpha 2, if you go close, touch the neighbour, the game ends. And also, I don't see it in this video, but the Shadow Man makes his first appearance as well. On the 4th of May 2017, Alpha 4 is released to the public. This one, I believe, was the first thing that kinda looks close to the final release. It's getting there. You can tell it's close as it's got the Fear mini games, as you see here. And also, a bit of the longest opening cinematic in every version. That lasts for about 46 seconds. You have nearly a minute. So it sucks if you want to be a speedrunner of this one. As you see again, you get a letter under the door, similar to Act 3 in the final release. And of course, I was going to say this was the first one to introduce the Fear mini games, if you don't count the early versions from Alpha 3 that were left in the files. But this is the first proper version of them. As you see, the first one's Double Jump, and that's the only one I could use. The basement though, very weird. It relies on the double jump because there's a few large gaps you have to jump, as you see there. The neighbour's also down there, but he ends up falling, and I don't know if he comes back at all. There's a door at the end of the corridor, which when I had Shadow Man in, I think it disappears after a while. The ending to Alpha 4, basically you're leaving the apartment that you've probably been evicted from. That's it, that's the end of Alpha 4. The endings really suck, because they always leave on a cliffhanger. I get it, it's early access, everything's changing, but come on, at least give us a good ending for once. I'm well aware there's 3 betas, but beta 1 is nothing. Beta 3 is more or less the same as the other 2. The betas open up with this cinematic, each one of them, because I did look them up. Each one of them has the same intro, so basically the same game. That's why I just skipped over them. I'm only going to talk about them a little bit. This cinematic here is basically just doors, nothing else to it. And then you're eventually waking up from the dream. Then you end up moving back to street where the neighbour's house is. Then you walk in, look at the basement door. It opens mysteriously, and kind of sucked into it, is the best way to say it. And you wake up again into another dream where you actually see the neighbour, see the basement. And this was the first time we were introduced to the neighbour boss battle. You know, the giant neighbour near the end of the game. it's also the first time you see that, and also not the last, because it also makes a return in the full release, where you have to break the train to get something, I forgot, and then you have to hit that neighbour with the firework, and then use a thing to shoot ball into his knee to knock him down a bit, and then use a bow and arrow to shoot his other knee so he kneels down. And then after that, a weird ending occurs where a tiny neighbour is playing with planes, and then he gets up and skips. I don't know whether this was meant to be Nicky as a child before and they just used the neighbour as a placeholder. I'm guessing that's the answer, but he walks over to this vase, stares at it for a while, and then reaches up to grab it. It falls and it breaks, and he looks surprised, and then after a while he runs to the window, looks at it for a few seconds, and then the Shadow Man appears. He runs away and being scared. After a while, running around, saving him, you grow big, beat the Shadow Man, overcome your fears. Then you get this weird ending where he collapses and explodes. And there's a door at the end of this white abyss, which is too bright for my eyes. And then it closes for some reason. Then you go through it, and then you kind of just wake up from this whole nightmare inside the basement door. I don't get it either, but I think we revisit this sort of ending later on in another part of this series. Zika wakes up with the gun, the gramophone, a few boxes and TVs in the basement. That's it for part 1. Coming up next, in the next part we have the full release and Hello Behind the Seek and Secret Neighbour to discuss. Hope you enjoyed this first part of this documentary / retrospective for Hello Neighbour. It's probably not the best video, but I tried my best for the first time. And I thank you for watching, and so I'll see you guys for part 2.